Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all doing well out there. We're going to get a good start to the weekend here and talk about some movies, which this topic was suggested by my very good friend, Totally Louie. Speaking of which, I better send him the link to the stream in case he wants to tune in. He wasn't able to join the conversation tonight, but I loved his topic suggestion, so I wanted to tackle it right away. And joining us for this one, we've got DJ Skywalker as usual. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Greetings and bienvenue.
Always nice to be on.
It's always nice to have you. Do anything fun today?
No, I just worked. I made some spaghetti and breadsticks, so I'm full of bread. And I'm sipping on some soda. That's about it.
Very good. And we've got Hariman joining us once again. How are you doing tonight, Hariman?
I'm doing good.
Good. So, for those, in case you haven't noticed, there's a tiny little Brawny holding a big bowl over his head on the bottom right side of the screen. So if you are enjoying the show and feel so inclined to want to help support the show, you can drop any amount of money in there. It'll drop a little coin in there, and if you want to play a message with it, it will play the message for you. If this is your first time joining in, welcome. I hope you enjoy. We are supported by our generous backers, all on Patreon at the moment, but I have recently expanded to Ko-fi and Subscribestar and TeePublic. If you're at all interested in any of those, you can check those out for some of the perks. And the goal, we're trying to get me into content creation full-time this year. So I greatly appreciate everyone's support, especially those on the $10 and up tier of Patreon. These names are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Canto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, Alicia Lynette, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Please check out all of their links in the description. And thank them for their support. They make some pretty good content themselves that I highly recommend checking out. So, with that out of the way, the question for tonight is, are popular movies bad for cinema? So I'll give my take on this real quick here. I definitely would not say that popular movies are bad for cinema. Because, the more money you put into something, the more effort and really love that you put into a craft, the better it can get, as long as the profits from that are invested wisely. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I went to film school, and the cinema productions was something I wanted at one point in time to do for a living. But I have a lot of respect for that art form and how complex it is and all of the moving parts, and you basically need an army in order to really do it. So if there's a lot of investment in that, it helps the medium improve. However, I don't like cheap copycats. So let's go around the table here. We got a relatively small panel tonight, so let's have a really good conversation. DJ, what do you think about the question tonight?
Honestly, I'm kind of on a mixed field with it, because in some instances, it can create some pretty interesting titles, but sometimes in the overall industry, popular movies just get flat out ignored. Like, it's something you see, especially with award shows every year, is like the movies everyone goes to see and watch, they're never nominated, they're never in the running, unless it's a Disney or a Pixar movie. Like, even for all these years, you've never seen the Marvel movies except Black Panther, I think, got in one year.
Well, if I were to interject for just a second, I think everybody knows that the awards are just politics, are just the politics of it, and don't really reflect anything. I don't think
but the awards themselves have also a greater impact on cinema, because more often than not, you have a huge genre of films that are made for the awards.
True. Okay, so go
Really?
ahead with your point.
So basically, I'm of the two minds that it's both too common, but also does nothing, which is a weird thing to be in because we've seen trends in movies all the time. Something gets popular once it gets big, like what are they called? Disaster movies, like with Armageddon and Volcano. Had a whole bunch of those. You had then when Harry Potter came out, you had a whole bunch of other young adult books suddenly trying to get picked up for a whole series that barely lasted one movie. And nowadays it's superheroes, which hard to tell what's going on with that trend, honestly. It's kind of a mixed bag.
It's certainly the longest lasting of the trends because, like, the Harry Potter thing only lasted for a few years in the early to late 2000s. The superheroes have been going on since 2008, so we're coming up on 15 years of superheroes, which is one of the longest Hollywood trends I've ever seen. Zombies.
Westerns lasted almost 20 years.
uh,
They started in like the early 60s and they were kind of wrapping up by the end of the 70s.
well, I've seen an interesting theory that Blazing Saddles is what killed the Western.
It did.
Yeah, it was just such a thorough, destructive diss track of a parody that everybody just collectively realized how dumb the Westerns were and how homogenous they'd become and just stopped watching them altogether. Okay, so Hariman, what do you think?
I'm in the middle on this because I think that some popular movies just create nothing but garbage to follow them because they're causing a bad trend due to studios wanting the cheapest and easiest way to make money. But at the same time, bad movies often inspire people to make better versions in the same genre. And the really good ones, like Star Wars, inspire generations of creators to make dozens of different movies that all are their own unique take on the sci-fi genre or other stories. Where like Shrek was pretty popular in its day, and it spun off the Puss in Boots franchise, which apparently has a really good spin-off in Puss in Boots 2 out right now.
Can you give me an example of a knockoff or a follow up or whatever we want to call it to something that was popular that was better than the original?
I know it exists, I just don't know it offhand.
Oh man, that doesn't help me.
I can point to examples in franchises where you've got like Terminator 2, the original Terminator. The Matrix is kind of an American take on Ghost in the Shell and other anime cyberpunk, and it's pretty good in its own right. It's a rare, but when it happens where somebody's inspired by something popular, it's usually 10 or 20 years down the line. So it's, I'm sorry I can't point out a better example.
Now I usually say something along the lines of just because it's popular doesn't mean it's good. Like Star Wars, for instance, I mean, I know it well, but even the original movies were far from the best movies, story-wise, their dialogue, things like that. So, in fact, and so the way they, Star Wars, when it first came out, had that issue of there was just so much lore behind it, and we only got like a little bit that you could portray through the movies, and then from there on out, you were almost expected to get all of the outside material in order to understand what was going on in Star Wars in the movies. And so I wouldn't have said Star Wars was good just because it was popular. It's certainly not the worst popular thing. But what do you guys think about that notion? Is, does popularity indicate quality of anything?
In some ways, it does, because for a movie to be popular, there has to be something that's good about it. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, but it has to be something that a lot of people like. Because, I mean, just this past year, the most popular movie of the year was Top Gun Maverick, and that movie is just downright good. It's better than the original, honestly, but it's just a simple movie. It's a pretty simple story. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's just something that people like. Just having a nice movie. So sometimes I think that's pretty simple enough, but it's when you try to break it down to understand why it was popular, where I think a lot of the knockoffs end up getting stuck, because they see they see their own thing in a popular movie and believe that if they just replicate that, it'll make their movie popular.
It's usually it it's usually a riding off of the coattails of whatever was popular. It's you know how I say all the time on the show, if you're just going through the motions or if there's no heart behind it, you can tell. Well, that's the prime example right there of when you get, like E.T. and Mac and Me. Does everybody know about this one?
I know of its existence. I've never tortured myself enough to look further into it.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, there was E.T., and everybody knows the Steven Spielberg movie E.T., and like within a year of that releasing, there was this McDonald's sponsored movie with roughly the same plot, but it was essentially an hour and a half long McDonald's commercial because they funded the whole thing. But they put it out in theaters expecting to compete with E.T. And it was just because E.T. was the most popular movie of the time that they were just like, okay, copy it, but make it a Big Mac commercial. And the alien's name was literally Mac, like Big Mac. So that's the type of thing
that.
That's the type of thing you get.
And I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, but that's the type of thing you get when you're just chasing the trends. But that is another question in and of itself that we could ask is, what is it popular and then it starts the trend, or do these trends just go in a cycle? For example, we also had a few years where every other movie that came out was a zombie movie. And then from like 2010 to 2012, every movie that wasn't a Marvel movie was a disaster movie. And I think that was because, we were, as a culture, sort of grasping onto that whole Mayan calendar thing. So they're like, oh, the world's going to end in a couple of years. Let's make movies about it. And those got pretty popular. So we're dealing with a chicken and egg situation here. What came first, the trend or the popular movie? Hariman.
I think it depends on which trend and which popular movie, because I actually looked up a set of examples, and The Matrix spawned a bunch of like cyberpunk and false reality movies. And there's movies like one of the movies where it was also a false reality movie was Dark City, and that seems to have inspired movies like Pleasantville, The Truman Show, and arguably Being John Malkovich, where that I think would actually be a good example of something that's better than the thing that might have inspired it, where Dark City is a very niche, heady science fiction movie, and Pleasantville is a lot more appealing and a little more cheerful. with trends, I think it really does depend on which trend in which movie, because some genres, some types of movies are always there. Like zombie movies, there was something every like few years, and it was like The Walking Dead, and I think it was The Walking Dead that really brought it into horribly popular again after it fell off of popularity from the John Romero boom of zombie movies. Um, I'm not sure of an example in the other direction though.
So, what sort of effect did that have on cinema as a whole then? If one thing is just inspiring the next thing, is that really having an effect on cinema as a whole if the trend is just going to cycle out in a few years?
We'll change it for a couple years, and sometimes there'll be a movie that's a cross genre or a spin-off from one of the movies in the trend that starts something new.
DJ, is there anything you want to add or take away from all of this?
Not really on this part. It's just.
Oh,
Hmm?
one quick thought on Star Wars. One reason why people can't duplicate the same success of Star Wars is because of when Star Wars came out. The Star Wars came out at the very end of the 70s, and it was the first optimistic the hero wins movie in about a decade after the 70s were a decade of movies that were all miserable movies where the hero either died in the end or if the hero won, it was a bittersweet victory and he lost something along the way, or only the sidekick survived, or something like that. So sometimes it is the time when something comes out that matters, that it was a different trend, that it's reversing and going the opposite direction that gets everybody interested again.
So,
Right now, where everybody's kind of tired of hero movies, especially since they're kind of bad lately.
well, I don't think people are tired of superhero movies. They're tired of the idiotic politics in their superhero movies.
No argument here.
I think, yeah, because what really, like I saw Angel of Speed say in the chat that superhero movies have been around a while before Iron Man, and that's true, but they sucked. Like the closest thing we got to good really was Blade.
Well, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man were good till 3.
They were. It wasn't really until like the mid 2000s that, the special effects technology got to a point where you could make something like superheroes look convincing and good, because like the Hulk had its own show, and back in the 70s with Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, and it was an all right show. But the action parts were so cheesy, because the technology really wasn't there for special effects, at least on a TV sort of budget and time frame. Because it came out around the same time as Star Wars did, or Star Wars was a little later, and Star Wars had great effects for its time, but you could, when you are working on a movie, you have all of that time to really develop that technology. You can't do that on a TV show. But something, I'm diverting from my own point here because I just realized the Hulk was a TV show and not a movie, and we're talking about movies. But we ultimately, and probably because of shows like the Hulk and early attempts at science fiction, we got the investment and we got the practice in those aspects of the special effects, that we could make them be good these days. And in order for that, like if they weren't popular enough for their time, then nobody would have ever tried it again. It would have been a bad investment. You guys following me during my ramble here?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of going all over the place, but yes.
Yeah, so what do you guys think?
Oh. Trying to think of what I lost what I was going to say.
So I'm saying popularity is good for cinema, even if it spawns a bunch of heartless clones. Fine. You know, the people who made them wasted their money. I hope they lose their money. I hope nobody watches them. And I hope they're forgotten until someone makes a knockoff that actually puts some heart into it and can be good and improve on the genre and improve on the art form. And in the best case scenario, in every other scenario, it gives us the practice that we need and the investment that we need in order to make the art better. Because if it's not popular, bad investment, no one's going to do it.
I think I can follow behind that. I would say that popular movies are not... They're bad for cinema in the short term, but I think they're a good investment in the long term. Because popular movies, they're movies people like. It gives a basis for what people like. But as the knockoffs come out, I've seen it several times in my own experience that as people notice the knockoffs, criticism arises. People build more critical thinking. They realize the stuff Hollywood's doing, and they say, no, we don't like it. And in the end, the movie people have to go back to the drawing board and create something else that can become popular, something else that people like, which I believe drives creativity, at least in the long term. In the short term, you're going to have people trying for cash grabs. But in the long term, I think it's good for people and for the cinema industry in itself.
Yeah, so that pretty much backs up what I was saying. Hariman, do you want to add or take anything away from it?
No, I mostly agree there. Sometimes even in the rush of bad things, you'll get something that's similar but still good. Going back to Shrek, there was the Little Red Riding Hood.
Hoodwinked?
Yes, Hoodwinked, where it was the same type of subversive fairy tale story, but it was also done well enough that it was entertaining and enjoyable.
Oh, goodness.
Although when you look at it now, that animation is horrible. Those models.
No argument.
I never got a chance to
No
finish.
argument there.
I never got a chance to finish Hoodwinked. But I remember laughing at it.
I mean, if you get up to the point where the squirrel drinks the coffee, you've basically seen the best parts of the movie.
I don't remember the skull, so maybe I didn't.
No,
get
squirrel.
Far enough. Oh, squirrel.
When the squirrel drinks the coffee.
Are we talking about Hoodwinked and not Over the Hedge?
Yeah.
Okay, because a squirrel.
Both had squirrels drink coffee.
Yes, they did. I never finished Over the Hedge either. That was just like.
That was fine.
I forget how old I was. I might have been a senior in high school or something like that. I was late high school and we had nothing to do. It was like the last day of classes. Teacher just rolled it out, on the TV to watch freaking Over the Hedge for some reason. And but the classes weren't long enough to finish the movie, so we got about halfway through.
Wow, that was 2006.
Alrighty then.
Over the Hedge came out in 2006.
Yeah, I can't.
That's over 15 years.
Yeah, so 2006.
It was a pretty decent movie. My dad still quotes it. The hedge trimmer, the weed hacker, Vern. Look out for the weed hacker.
Yeah, I can't remember how old I was in 2006. I can't remember how old I am now half the time. But that's where I saw Over the Hedge. What was Over the Hedge a knockoff of? Because I'm pretty
I
sure
think it was just an attempt to capitalize on cute fuzzy animals being not quite animals. I don't know what
DreamWorks. So it was DreamWorks still. That would be Katzenberg getting revenge on Disney still.
Okay.
So
And
basically,
now
making a
DreamWorks
Disney-esque movie.
It'd be a what
and
movie?
now DreamWorks is just putting out mediocre stuff. Sadly,
I'm not sure what you're talking about. How to Train Your
at
Dragon.
least
Kung Fu Panda.
Well, this would have been
those
the
were all
lull
years
years.
ago.
This would have been the lull years between Shrek and like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon, where some of their movies were fine, a lot of them were kind of hit and miss.
Mm-hmm. So, how much of the popularity comes from luck, do we think? So, say you make a movie, and you're just expecting it to flop, but then for some reason, everyone in the country sees it. Do you think that's a skill thing that it makes the movie really good, or is it just lightning in a bottle? What do you guys think?
I think it's more quality than luck. There is a lot of luck to it, but a lot of the movies that are popular and loved and stay in the public consciousness are ones that are either really good or have parts of them that are really good that the audience can latch on to. Like going back to Star Wars, it's pretty easy to like sympathize with and identify with Luke being a nobody who gets wrapped up in something bigger than himself. And what is basically a space trucker who is trying to get by, also getting pulled in. But sometimes it really is just, it doesn't get released alongside something bigger than it, or around a controversy that gets it pulled from the theaters, or some other weird thing doesn't happen. Or the producer doesn't get a bug up his butt to add a character they want in it and ruin the whole movie.
So you're saying it's definitely a skill as long as it's not sabotage. Is that what you're saying, Hariman?
45% skill, 30% avoiding sabotage, 25% sheer dumb luck.
Alrighty then. I'm not
Margin
sure.
of error.
Okay.
20%.
Yeah. Well, okay. You almost covered your math. I'm like, wait a second. I don't think that adds up to 100. And then you said margin of error, and I'm like, okay, we can give you the margin of error percent. And then you said 20% and just proceeded to shoot yourself in the foot. I was like watching you aim the gun at your foot, away from your foot, at your foot, away from your foot. You finally aimed it away from your foot and reached for the trigger. I said, okay, he's safe. And then you pointed it right back at your foot and pulled the trigger. I was like, gosh darn it.
It's more like margin of error 5 to 10%.
Yeah, something like that. Goodness, I'm not even good at math, and I was able to check your arithmetic.
And you went, wait a minute.
What'd you say, DJ?
And this is why Brawny can't follow a budget.
What do you mean I can't follow a budget? I budget better than most people. Okay, we're getting off topic here. I don't know where the frick you come up with these things. Have you not followed my life? I throw $1 further than anybody you've ever met. Alrighty then.
So that's the squeaking dollars I hear, because they're stretched so much.
No, those are my frickin' joints.
Oh.
Yeah.
You have my sympathy.
Yeah, that's right. My old man joints. Okay, so DJ, what do you think? How much of it is luck and how much of it is skill in making something popular?
I would definitely say skill doesn't matter with squat.
Really?
I would say it definitely depends on the amount of work that goes into it and a whole heck ton of luck. I want to say it's at least 70% luck. 30% hard work, done by people that are actually caring about it. Because skill level, you can have the greatest crew and the greatest director make a movie together, and you can still get absolute shite. It doesn't. I would not chalk it up to skill, more quality, and I don't believe skill is included in that quality.
So, can you think of any examples where a product was heartless, so just made to chase the trend, just made to chase money, and still came out popular?
Avatar from James Cameron. It chases the big, pretty blockbuster trend, which is permanently ongoing in Hollywood. And
Well,
it
yeah,
works.
it kind of has to be. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I feel like there's one on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember.
And the thing about Avatar is, like, yeah, the story was simple and pretty much just a knockoff of, combining Halo with Pocahontas. But
Dances with Wolves in Fern Gully in space.
yeah, right. So we've seen that exact story before. We've seen that Mad Lib before, but that does not change the fact that Avatar was the most popular. It was the highest grossing movie of all time when it first came out.
It
Right.
still is.
It still
Well,
is.
it got re-released a couple times.
Yeah, it's still the #1 box office movie of all time.
Yeah. So and
Oh,
then what was it? 14 years later, just recently, the Avatar 2 came out, and and what did they say? It needed to box office 2 billion just to break even or something like that.
I think it's over
Yeah.
1 billion at the moment.
It said something like 1.5 billion, or on track for at least 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
So it's most likely going to be a success.
So here's that just raises the question of if Avatar was heartless. Now the
I would
sequel,
definitely say, at least on the James Cameron's part, it wasn't heartless.
okay,
Because he's weird. He's weird.
okay.
James Cameron's just weird. Who would put that much heart into this?
So
Honestly,
then what
Avatar's
part of it?
kind of schlock.
What
But
part of it was heartless then?
I didn't recommend it. Hariman did.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying it's hit all the like tropes to get the trend.
I mean, it did cause
And
3D movies.
and on top of that, my train of thought just impersonated Amtrak. Completely off the rail.
I think we call that losing.
Fair. Very fair.
I think you're grasping at
Avatar's-
straws here, Hariman.
Avatar's story has like nothing in it for the original. It's just like the barest bones copy of what's been overdone, but it's so pretty that it distracts from it, and the story is so paint by numbers that you can ignore the story. It's basically the perfect popcorn movie. Just watch the pretty movie, eat the popcorn, shut your brain off.
So that must be part of what makes something popular. Then is if it's simple enough to be digested en masse like that you don't need to really have your brain on. Which I think, as much as part of me doesn't like the idea of escapism, I'm certainly not above it myself. And I think ultimately that's why most people go to ingest media, is for the escapism of it. So they certainly don't want to think too hard. And I'm weird, when I want to sit down and have an existential, that I enjoy the existential crisis that I, have talked about enjoying in my movies in the past. So that begs a different question now of, are simple stories bad for cinema? So, we've got all this we've got all this practice making good zombie movies, and we've got all this practice making good superhero movies, and all this practice making good genres. What am I saying? You know, we've got all the genres that we've gotten down to a science, but story, by and large, has not evolved, which is arguably the most important part, is whether or not you've got a solid story. So should the stories be evolving with the art form, or should they be staying simple? Or, you know, does the simple story make the good cinema? DJ, what do you think?
I mean, like I said before with Top Gun Maverick, it's pretty simple. So I think simplicity is definitely a good baseline for a lot of great movies. At least on the popular end, like they're not often going to be masterpieces or anything, but I think simple stories resonate with audiences more because it's easier for more people to get into them, which is basically popularity.
Interesting. Hariman, what do you think?
I agree that simple stories are easier to get more people to resonate with, but there are some really complex movies out there where, like, the noir genre and mystery movies, where they're actually pretty complex, but if the audience can like latch on to a specific character or group or part of the movie that pulls them in, I think as long as you have that hook that pulls people into the movie, complex movies will be popular as well.
Can we name any examples of a movie that had everything that I'm looking for here? So the cinematography was great, the visual effects were great, the story was complex, like you didn't know exactly what was going to happen the whole time, and was popular. Can we think of anything like that? Sixth Sense. Yeah, and that was definitely something for its time, because that was one of those once in a lifetime sort of movie twists that nobody saw coming in the moment, and that got really popular. So there's certainly an example.
Could you repeat the question? I think I missed it.
Okay, so what movie had it all? Are there any popular movies that had the really good, like, nice, solid story where you that still had its twists and turns, and so good story that wasn't wholly predictable, popular, good cinematography, good acting, good visual effects, so just good everything, and was including the writing, and was popular.
How to Train Your Dragon?
How to Train Your Dragon. Yeah, that's certainly good, because we talked about I think a month ago when we were talking about adaptations that How to Train Your Dragon was originally a book series, and then they turned it into a movie, and the book was just completely different from what the movie became. So I'm almost willing to call, based on what I learned about How to Train Your Dragon, it's an original story from there. So yeah, that's certainly something good.
It was popular. It was part of the 3D movie trend in a way. It was very popular in 3D. It was one of the few movies that I saw like 3 times in cinema.
Will Eisen says, how about Shawshank Redemption? Yeah, Shawshank Redemption did very good when it came out. The Green Mile.
King stories that aren't horror.
Yeah,
I have
the Green Mile.
I have an example.
Or no, not the Green. What am I saying? Or am I saying the Green Mile? Yes, I am saying.
Movie?
No, that's the long. You see, I confused myself for a second too. That the football movie is The Longest Yard. I'm talking about the Green Mile. You guys don't know that. You guys don't know the Green Mile, do you?
I
haven't
watched it.
It's another Stephen King adaptation. I might butcher this synopsis because it's been a very long time. innocent convict on death row with the power to heal people.
Interesting.
Yep. Will Eisen says Game of Thrones first 3 seasons. I referred to Game of Thrones the first 3 seasons as medieval themed softcore porn. So, and also a TV
we can
series,
thank Game of Thrones for Lord of the Rings coming back.
No, we cannot thank them. If anything, they need to get beat up harder for that.
It was sarcasm, Brawny.
Okay.
I'm very well aware the Rings of Power is an absolute garbage fire.
Indeed, indeed.
We can basically say it's a ripoff.
Oh, Will Eisen says The Green Mile is his literal favorite movie and book. Tell me, Will Eisen, which is better, the movie or the book? Hariman, what were you going to say?
Please don't insult good garbage fires. Also, the movie Alien. That was a movie that was smarter than it seems on the surface. It looks like on the surface as a alien monster kills off crew one at a time, only hero survives. But the way Alien is written, you would think the captain would survive because it's usually the captain that survives. But it's Ripley who survives because she's the only one who has the sense not to do certain stupid things at certain points. And that was unpredictable in the alien monster genre because of that. And there's also layers in the storytelling, like Bishop's speech about a perfect life form. And him, I think, being jealous is because he's conflicted due to his programming where he's supposed to protect people, but he's got to hurt people to complete his mission to try and bring the alien back. So there's more to some of the popular movies than it seems from the broad overview that people have of them. Terminator 2 also had the it isn't just an action movie where it's also the humanizing of the Terminator and Sarah Connor after she becomes kind of a bit crazy from the stress of knowing there's an apocalypse on the way.
One movie that I can think of, but I don't know if it was very popular because I don't know. I got introduced to it, I think in like 2015. I watched it while I was filming Buck to the Face for Friendship Games. It was a movie called John Dies at the End. And that was a roller coaster of a movie. Have either of you gentlemen ever seen this movie?
Can't say I've ever heard of it.
I've heard of the book, but I haven't watched it.
I didn't know it was a book. Gosh darn it. Why is everything a book? Oh, man.
They're good source material.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it certainly takes a lot of the guesswork out of the movie. But yeah, this was a roller coaster of the movie. I won't really spoil it, not that I could because of how crazy it was, but I do recommend everybody go check out John Dies at the End if you haven't seen that movie. I had no idea what was going to happen next the whole time. And then it ended with a really crazy twist. And you won't know what that twist is until John dies at the end. I'll put it that way. So, yeah, that movie, if it had been popular, I guess, so by the sounds of it, it wasn't very popular. That would have checked all of those boxes for me. Does anybody else have anything they want to add or say or bring up before we move on to audience participation?
I think I just want to say, even though sometimes the trends that follow popular movies can be pretty dismal, a lot of the most popular movies of their time are still remembered to this day. Aliens, Terminator, Star Wars, all popular movies at the time, and to this day, they're all-time classics. Sure, you'll always have your cult classics and stuff, but I think people need to also remember popularity is a thing for a reason. Some people just don't like things that are popular, and that can be fine, but they're popular for a reason.
All right. So let's move on to audience participation then. We've got a lot from Pallet and Pony T here, but let's tackle them. The first thing he said was, do you think popular movies are being remade because of new technology? I definitely think so. A lot of the movies we're seeing these days simply would not have been possible 20 years ago. What do you guys think?
Not ready to give them the benefit of the doubt for those.
Why
Honestly, I think they're doing it just because of name recognition. Because that's definitely a big thing in Hollywood right now. I forget where I heard it, but from someone stated that the animation industry specifically has basically reverted to where if you don't have popular actors or popular IP, your stuff isn't going to be made right.
Interesting.
So I definitely think that I'm not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're doing it for updating reasons.
Okay. I'm cautiously awaiting the revival of the Avatar: The Last Airbender franchise. Because
the live action series and the sequel?
Yeah, I don't even know if I'm gonna bother with the live action series because it's Netflix and you just know they're gonna frickin' butcher it.
That's disappointing.
I'm gonna wait. Some brave soul is gonna go ahead of me and see if Avatar: The Last Airbender by Netflix is any good, and then I'll consider what to do from there. What were you gonna say,
I'm more
Hariman?
excited for the sequel series.
Well, with Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think they just need to say that Korra didn't happen and do a new sequel from there off the comics.
I would agree. The other day I saw a video where somebody said that it's not necessarily that they need to undo Korra because they said they wouldn't. They specifically said the sequel series is going to be the next Earth Avatar after Korra. They explicitly said after Korra.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going like that, then what this video said that I agree with is they need to have the next Earth Avatar reconnect the Avatar with the past lives. And the justification he gave for that was, Avatar Roku failed to stop the war, so Aang had to stop the war. And Korra destroyed her connections with the past avatars, so now the next Earth Avatar needs to re-establish those connections. But yeah, he agreed too. He was like, yeah, that was the worst decision Avatar ever made. And that's considering the platinum mech that shot lasers. And everybody agrees, so they definitely need to do something about that. Kagan Dragon says Cars was a good movie and they're banned. But anyway, go ahead, Hariman.
That platinum mech didn't make sense because you think they would have gunpowder and guns before they would have like full-on 40-foot tall mecha.
You'd think they would understand how the element platinum works. Yeah,
it's the purest metal that has no impurity. Bullshit. It was platanium.
Yep.
I didn't mind Korra, but I am excited for the new one because it's going to be totally my jam. I love having these modern day fantasy stories.
There is a lot that could go very, very wrong. All I want are characters that I actually like. Because I don't think I liked a single character outside of, like, sometimes Tenzin was really cool in Korra, but Tenzin was cool. The villains were better than the last Airbender. That's all I can give it. I did not really like any of the freaking characters. Let's see here. Paladin Pony T says, I have a big one. Avatar started the rise in 3D movies. Yeah, that went on for a little while, and then I think people realized that by and large, we don't like 3D.
I think what it just became is that it was became a harder push when the novelty wore off. But this has happened several times. 3D keeps coming and going from movies and TVs, and we had the huge push with the 3D TVs. So what I can respect out of it is the big push in technology for it, because eventually, who knows what could spawn out of that kind of tech for having 3D television and whatnot. It could spawn into, I think it basically spawned into the VR systems we have now.
Interesting.
So we could just be inching forward to the virtual world.
Vulpecula says, forgive me, but I'm throwing the Twilight Saga under the bus. Listen, Vulpecula, nobody disagrees with you. Twilight had horrible story, horrible writing, horrible visuals, horrible acting, even for its time.
Tried watching the first one on TV. I fell asleep.
My gosh, I had one of my younger sisters, I caught her watching Twilight one time, and she actually said something to the effect of like, oh, you know, this is relationship goals, and I shut the movie off and I sat her down and I had to give her like a man talk of like, no, you stay far away from any of these. If you ever meet a dude who reminds you of literally any character in this, you run the heck away. You do not get involved with that man, because I'm going to end up having to smack some sense into you, and I'm going to end up having to kill him. So
you did the right thing.
Yeah, I think I did, and she grew up relatively well adjusted.
I mean, that's almost like saying that you should be following the relationship examples in 50 Shades of Grey.
It's darn close.
50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fanfic.
Yeah.
And it's honestly one of the few things that is worse than Twilight, because those movies are like, these are warning signs of bad relationships.
Well, yeah.
Edward is a stalker. Jacob is that bastard thug guy who's going to punch you when he's angry. Bella is a vampire who destroys lives around her. Correction, succubus who destroys lives around her as she plays her boyfriends against each other. The dad, I think, is the only reasonable character. He becomes a drunk because of Bella.
If you would like come up to me and said, hey, can you possibly think of anything worse than Twilight? I probably would have said Twilight fanfiction, and you would have been like, well, don't I got the book for you? That would have happened there. But
that still got a sequel.
I know, right? How the frick did, that is a very interesting, the popularity, that's what we should have talked about, is thank God 50 Shades of Grey didn't have a huge effect on cinema as a whole, because if I had to deal with a bunch of 50 Shades of Grey knockoffs, I probably would have swallowed a brass pain pill. But
thankfully a lot of the knockoffs of Twilight were more just making fun of it.
Yeah,
or trying to do it better and actually being marginally better, because it's such a low bar that, like last week, the bar is a tripping hazard in hell, and they're limbo dancing with Satan.
Yeah, so it's so low, and yet they find a way under it. But anyway, is
Satan even good at limbo dancing?
I'm sure he is. He used to be an angel. I'm sure he's good at a whole lot of things. All right. I mean, he got his butt kicked one time in a fiddle duel, but I think that was an outlier.
That was a Georgian. You can't really rate that.
Yeah, those Georgians aren't technically humans either.
I believe they are Florida adjacent.
Yeah, they're
Florida mutations.
Goodness, I was trying to make a point. Yeah. Oh, the popularity of 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight is certainly an interesting case study for psychology as a whole. I can hope that someday I can understand that and cure humanity of that. ailment. Like, I need to isolate the gene that causes people to enjoy 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight so that I can erase it from the genome using mRNA research that we recently got from all the COVID vaccines. And then humanity will finally achieve peace. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm glad nobody laughed at that joke.
Sorry, I was busy clearing your chat of bots.
I was trying to not laugh too hard.
Gosh darn it, when I'm telling jokes, it's because I want people to laugh. What the heck is wrong with you? Will Eisen says, it's...
Well, I did have one more thing to say.
Okay,
do you think the Twilight fans are the people who think that Joker and Harley have a good relationship?
Oh my God.
There's a lot of...
That Venn diagram is practically a circle.
Yeah. There's a lot of desperate housewives who don't understand a good relationship.
Yeah.
Or spinsters.
Oh, I triggered the Georgians in the chat. That's hilarious.
Are two of your biggest watchers.
Yeah, two of my biggest fans are Georgians, and I just dunked so hard on whatever. In your next life, in your next life, try being born in a real state like Florida
or Montana.
Yeah, I'll give you Montana. Just whatever you do, don't be born in Nebraska.
Hey.
Like, the only thing worse
now
than...
You're just doing it on purpose.
You're darn right I'm doing it on purpose. I was doing it on purpose from the beginning. Are you just now catching on?
Well, apparently it wasn't on purpose because you didn't know they were in Georgia.
Listen, I do frag damage, okay? I pull the pin on the grenade. I throw it into a crowded room. It's gonna hit somebody.
Even you.
Even me. You're darn right. Okay, so Will Eisen says, in relation to our conversation about how much of it is luck versus how much of popularity is skill, he goes, you're both wrong. It's obviously 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
I feel like I should get the reference, but it's not coming to me.
You uncultured swine.
Hasn't that been established? I haven't seen most movies from the 80s.
It's not a movie, it's a song.
I don't remember who did the song, but I remembered that it was a song.
Paladin,
it better not be Eminem.
It is not Eminem.
Thank God.
I forgot who did it too, actually. Paladin Pony T says, do you guys think lesser known characters like Conan, Elric, Spawn, and Solomon could be used now instead of popular characters? Okay, so this is really interesting because all of those characters definitely still have their own alive fandoms, like people that, a lot of people that carry. So if they made something good in those franchises right now, they'd take right off. But that would be the thing. They'd have to be good.
Yeah. Especially with Witcher Blood Origins being awful, and anything good right now is going to stand out. Mm-hmm. That's why Avatar 2 succeeded, is because it is reasonably good and watchable and pretty.
I don't think Conan...
Watchable is a hard thing to say when it's 3 hours long.
I actually don't know Elric, and I don't know Solomon Kane. So I'll probably have to look those guys up. But I think I heard a couple of years ago that Spawn was getting a continuation, like the old HBO animated series Spawn. The one that was really freaking gruesome.
I mean, with how Warner is doing, it was probably canceled already.
I don't know.
Probably wouldn't be too bad idea to give Spawn another movie. I mean, you go back to that original Spawn movie. Holy crap! You
talking about the live action one?
Yes.
Yeah, that was rough.
Those effects, man. Those effects.
Well, that's the reason.
How do you do a cape so bad?
That's the reason why we, why the superhero movies needed to wait a little while is for the technology. But that again, like we talked about earlier tonight, that's a chicken and egg situation. Do we have to get the bad stuff out of the way, or do we wait until the technology is good enough? generally you got to get the bad stuff out of the way. You got, most artists make 10,000 bad drawings before their first good one. There's just no way around it. Vulpecula says Riddick was awesome.
There's actually a mathematical principle that defines how much actually is popular or successful. It's called the Pareto distribution, and it states that 20% of like whatever is sold, or 20% of what is made will make 80% of the profits when it's sold, or 20% of your floor is what you will walk on 80% of the time. And it's actually true of a metric ton of things, where like if you look at classical music, the people that we know, like those half dozen classical songs from, they've done dozens, if not hundreds of other songs that nobody ever hears of, that all led up to or were around their best works that we all know.
Well, with Mozart at the very least, that's definitely a good thing, because he's got one song about his gruesome explosive diarrhea, and I don't think we really need to hear that song. Please tell me you knew about that already, and I'm not just giving you this education now.
You're giving me this education now.
Mozart was one of the nastiest dudes that ever lived. He was a sick. It was something must have been in the water in Germany during that period of time, because I think it was right around the same sort of century that Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformations and started the Lutheran Church, and he was German too, and he had a lot of the same problems that Mozart had. So something was going on in Germany during the 14th or 15th century.
The only stuff I know about it is from the movie Amadeus.
Amadeus was very watered down.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so
you gotta make it family friendly.
Yeah, so you've seen Amadeus, so take Amadeus and turn it up to like 10, maybe even 11, and you're getting close to Mozart.
Wow. And I just did a web search, and I didn't doubt you, but it's hilarious that Mozart liked poop jokes.
Yeah. Also had an infatuation
that's like
with
how
his cousin, if
that's
I remember
like how
correctly.
Shakespeare is proclaimed as this great and noble satirist, when no, he was actually the guy making the fart jokes and dog pulling someone's dress and knocking them over.
Oh yeah,
jokes.
he was like the Tyler Perry of his time.
Well, I mean, when you're stripped of a childhood.
Yeah, that'd do it. You end up never maturing. All right, so Will Eisen says movies can hit people emotionally more than books just by virtue of being a passive observer. And that reminded me of a meme I saw a long time ago. I think it was someone had taken a Harry Potter book and they traced the shape of a CD out of it, like a DVD.
One.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. And then they carved the CD out of the book, like the shape of the CD out of the book, and then they took it and, put it next to it, and the caption said, you lose a big chunk of the story when you adapt it from a book. So
you also lose a chunk when you cut out of it.
But you get the analogy. And it's not like Harry Potter books are rare,
I gotta disagree with that. I think books can get you more into the characters and more identifying with the characters, because a book can get you into the head of the character and just really just like rip your heart out, show it to you, smack you in the face with your own heart, then put your heart back and give you a hug and tell you it'll be okay.
Well, I think you're
It's just a
You're-
commercial for Sour Patch Kids.
I think you're agreeing with what we're saying, Hariman, because we just said you lose the story when you lose parts of the story when you adapt it, because there's certain things you just can't get across in a visual medium like a movie.
True. Yes, I am agreeing with you.
Mm-hmm. You can do the same thing like and granted, this might not be the best example because the novelizations of Star Wars all came after the movies, but like in the novelization of what was it? It was either the last it was either the Return of the Jedi or the Empire Strikes Back. I think it was the Return of the Jedi. And while Darth Vader and Luke are fighting on the Death Star, Darth Vader's having this internal monologue like, oh shoot, he's actually really strong with the Force despite having started late and having only trained for a few years. And he's like describing all of these like Jedi powers that Jedi have. And I remember one of them was like moving with the speed of thought. So it's just like you think and there's no gap in time between the thought and you moving, which is incredibly, like imperceptibly fast, right? But another Jedi would be able to pick up a thing. So that kind of thing, you'd never be able to show that kind of thing in a movie. You might be able to get a sense of some of those powers in an animated format, which is why like both versions of the Clone Wars did so well at really showing what the Jedi were capable of. But yeah, when your best descriptions of what your characters are really going to be capable of are going to be in your books.
I've actually seen an anime where they had one character develop a power that let him turn his aura ability into electricity. Mm-hmm. And instead of using his own reflexes through his nerves, he set his aura up so that it would trigger automatic reactions under one of two different conditions. And one of those was making himself fight impossibly fast because instead of his nerves moving him, his aura is moving like lightning over him and giving his body the commands instead.
Yep.
But that takes like 5 to 10 minutes of an episode to explain in an anime that's built around heavy explaining. And going in depth into the world's powers. And yeah, that would not work in a 2-hour movie unless the entire movie is centered around this and it's like an effects movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, even then, I don't think that works very, like they do that a lot in anime, and I don't think it works well in anime either because it kills the pacing of the episode and it kills the immersion. And it's just another one of those things where it just feels like they're, instead of finding an organic way to show it, they just gotta info dump all of it on you, which I don't think is the mark of a good writer. Got a couple of interesting things here. MLP Unplugged says, good question. Have you checked out the Rift rocket yet? No, I haven't. I don't know what that is. Nobody tells me anything. Battleship says Vader wasn't that smart. Vader was more like, Luke is stronger than me. I think Palpatine might be replacing me, which is also a valid thing that Sith often went through, if I remember correctly. Sniper Nighter says, I disagree with the idea that you can't get as much out of a visual medium. The real issue is that media has limits where simply writing words in a book does not. And I think that's an all right point. What do you guys think?
There's stories you can tell visually that you can't do in a book. So there's definitely times where anime series will also just like gut punch you in the feels and as hard as a book will. It comes down to quality and whether or not you get into the character mindset and the story involved.
Mm-hmm.
Books have a little easier task to do that, but it can be done in animation and live action.
I would definitely say books have the advantage to be able to getting what they want across easier. But at least I would say live action has it the hardest because you have to rely on people the most. But I would say animation has a much easier time of doing it because you can get the finer details a lot better. Like, sure, you shouldn't always do what anime does, where you have the inner monologues and the speeches that go on forever. But in animation, you can get subtle facial expressions that can give off a similar idea. Just those subtle little nods to the head or shift in the eyebrow, just something in the expression that can tell what's being thought. It's pretty hard to do in live action unless you're like Jim Carrey and super expressive. So live action definitely has the greater limitations.
Alrighty then. I think that's all we got for tonight. So this should be real quick. Hariman, give us some final thoughts and one thing you learned.
Learned that shooting myself in the foot hurts.
Yeah, you
I
should
already
avoid
knew
doing
it. I already knew it.
And bullets are
It's worth
expensive
being
these days,
reminded.
dude. You can't just go be wasting ammunition like that. Like, I would have called you out even if you had just shot it into the ground. But, you know, now I gotta freaking dig out a bullet and give you gauze and stitches and cauterizing. And it's just a pain in the neck. Like, you should have just been thinking a little bit more clearly with yourself.
Plus, this has happened on you. He can sue for medical damages.
He can. He would need to know a lot more about me in order to file the right paperwork. Isn't that right, Hariman?
Yep, I would. I could find it out. But I won't because you're giving first aid.
Yeah, nice on the trigger finger there, DJ. Thanks for taking care of that bot. DJ, so give us some final thoughts and one thing you learned.
Final thoughts are popularity isn't as bad as people think. It can just be annoying. Thing I learned, I learned about the Green Mile. Didn't know about that. Might check that out sometime. Probably not, but who knows?
Yeah.
I like Stephen King movies that aren't horror.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. So definitely
in all seriousness,
check that out. Yeah.
I learned the name of a song that I want to listen to now. Remember the name from Fort Minor.
Yep, Fort Minor. You're probably not going to like it. Like, from what I've gathered of your musical taste, you might not like it, but still check it out at the very least. You'll understand the meme.
Yeah. Final thoughts. I think immediate popularity is one thing, but one thing we didn't really touch on are movies where they don't have immediate popularity, but they're vindicated by time and become like a cult classic or even sometimes a part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because after they're released, they get recognition for their quality as more and more people find out about them.
Like Treasure Planet and Atlantis.
Yeah, Treasure Planet especially, because that's a shame that didn't do better.
Well, as I understood it, Disney intentionally sabotaged it.
As Disney does.
As Disney does. So we're going to sabotage Disney. All right, guys. And with that, I got to go get my Disney pitchfork and torch. So I hope you all enjoyed the show tonight. If you would like to be on the show, I would love to have you. We'll just get you on the Patreon. Subscribe, start Ko-fi for as little as $1 a month. We're trying to get up to 3,000 a month so I can do this full time. And I would love to have you all on the show. Very grateful to my supporters, especially those on the $10 and up tier. These are Princess Heather Blossom.
The implications.
What the heck? Oh yeah, you're over there messing with your sound booth. Never, oh wait, oh wait a second, no, the sound booth was, there we go. So, oh, that was a tip. I forgot that's what the, I forgot that that's, yeah, I thought you had me on your soundboard for a second there, but I forgot that was the sound that Emerald Spencer said too when somebody gives me a tip. So thank you very much for the tip. The dojo tipped $1.69. Yep, so there we go. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much. Big thanks to the $10 tier, Princess of the Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, who joined us tonight, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Bridge the Hedgehog, Alicia Lynette, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Check out all their links in the description as well. They make some pretty good stuff. I need to get out as you know, my girlfriend is throwing a party out there, and they need me to make them some pizza. So you all have a wonderful night and a great weekend. Stay safe. God bless. Say good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.